Both of these two sisters require chalitza, but they may not be taken in yibum. And if the brothers went ahead and married the sisters, they must divorce them. When Elias says in the name of Beit Shammai, they may keep them both, but Beis Hillel says they must divorce them. Rabbi ben Mahaliah testified concerning 4 matters. The sages said to him, rescind from your podium on the 4 matters that you have said, and we will appoint you as the Av Beis Din for the Jewish people. Maccabiah replied to them, it is preferable to be called a fool all my days and not become a wicked person for even one moment before the omnipresent, that people should not say, Maccabiah retracted from his opinions for the sake of obtaining a position of authority. Here, Maccabiah would declare tummy the deposited hair and yellow uterine blood, but the sages declared them tahor. He would permit he would permit benefiting from the hair of a blemished bakor, which fell out and was placed in the recess in the wall, and afterwards he slaughtered the animal, and the sages prohibited. Rabbi Akiva ben Nahal used to say, we do not give to drink neither to a female convert nor to a free slave woman. But the Chachamim say we do give them to drink. They said to him, an incident once occurred in Yerushalayim in connection with Rachemes, a freed slave woman, and Shemaiah and Avtayan gave her soda water to drink. Akiva ben Malach replied to them, they gave her to drink similar. And they
in other words, they gave her a placebo.
Right. And they excommunicated Akiva. He died in a state of excommunication, and the court had his coffin stoned. Rabbi Yehuda said, heaven forbid that one should once say that Akiva was excommunicated, for the doors of the temple are not closed on anyone from the entire people of Israel who is as great in wisdom and in fear of sin as Akiva ben Mahal. Rather, who was it that they excommunicated? It was Eliezer ben Chanach, who slighted the requirements of keeping one's hands tahor. And when he died, the court sent its agents, and they placed a stone on his coffin, which teaches you that when anyone is excommunicated and dies in a state of excommunication, the court stones his coffin. At the time of Akiva's death, he said to his son, my son, retract from the 4 matters that I used to say. He said to Akiva, his father, but why did you not retract yourself? Akiva said to his son, I heard these rulings pronounced by the majority, and they, the sages, heard them pronounced by the majority. Thus I adhered to receive my tradition, and they adhered to receive their tradition. But you heard one set of rulings, one pronounced by a single individual, myself, and a conflicting set of rulings pronounced by the majority. Therefore, it is preferable for you to understand the words of the individual and to grasp onto the words of the majority. He said to Akiva, Father, intercede with your colleagues with me. Akiva answered, I will not intercede. He said to Akiva, perhaps you have found some cause in me. Akiva said to him, no, it is not. It is your deeds that will bring you close to the sages, and your deeds that will distance you. Okay.
Okay. All right. Perik Vav. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Ha'id Chamisha Devarim. So the 5 things that he testifies. She ma'anim es hakatanos, that under certain circumstances, one should instruct a young girl. Remember, this is the orphan girl who was married off by her mother and brothers. So it's a drabanan situation, and there's certain situations when we instruct her to refuse to marry somebody, to refuse to remain married to somebody. There's a certain case in Yevamos where it complicates things. The fact that she is married to it's for example two brothers married to 2 sisters, okay, and the one sister is this katana, and the other one is a gedola, and the husband of the gedola dies. Now the husband of the katana can't marry the Yavama because of the sister, and he's not going to be allowed to remain married to this wife because he's got a zika midoraisa to the sister for Yibum, to the widow for Yibum, and he's only married to the katana midrabanan. So in any case, he's going to lose her. So what Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, in this circumstance, you tell the girl, who's in any case going to lose her husband, rather do miyun so that he can at least do Yibum with your sister. Because once he do miyun, the marriage is retroactively cancelled, and there's no more issur of marrying his wife's sister. So that he was never married to her.
Right.
As opposed to if he has to divorce her, then he's not allowed to marry either of them. He's going to have to give her a divorce, and he's going to have to give her a chalitza.
That's a terrible situation for the girl.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's one case. Also, he gave Eduyos that, remember, we saw these cases in where was this? Was it in Kasubos or was it in Vamos? Where the fact is that we give Edus Isha, that we permit a woman to remarry on the basis that one witness testifies that her husband died overseas, right? Because at the same time we place the onus on her to verify this, because there are going to be severe penalties if she goes and lives with another man and then her husband turns up. Okay, but nonetheless, it's a big hitter for agunas, to prevent agunas, that we allow even one witness to testify that her husband is dead. Okay, third thing, sheniskal tarnagol b'Yerushalayim al sheher harages hanefesh, that when the Torah speaks about a shor haniskal, an ox that has to be stoned because it killed a person, it's lav davka an ox. The Torah is just talking about the most common sort of case where you have a large animal that's got the potential easily to kill a person. Even in a case where you've got a chicken that killed a baby by whatever, attacking it, that chicken would also have to be put to death. Point number 4, ala yayin ben arba'im yom shenis nasech al gav hamizbeach, that wine that goes onto the mizbeach has to be intoxicating. It has to have fermented, and therefore it needs to have fermented at least 40 days. But 40 days is the cutoff. Anything less than 40 days is considered not wine, and it can't go on the mizbeach. But after that, that's the cutoff. So that's the 4th thing that he testified. And the 5th thing is al tamid shel shacha shekarev b'arba shas, that you may bring the morning tamid until 4 hours, or four halachic hours have passed in the day.
Right.
Okay. Mishna Beis. Hey, Rabbi Yeshua v'Rabbi Nechunya ben Eli Nasan ish Kfar Bavli. Okay, long name, but the discussion over here is about an aver from a dead body. Now this is even an aver that's less than a kabetza. Normally we say you need a kabetza in order to transmit tumah, but here this is a complete aver. So for example, the top joint of a pinky. Yeah, that's not a kabetza. But that is nonetheless a matame ohel. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer omer lo amru ela al aver min hachai, and Rabbi Eliezer, as we're going to see actually in the next Mishna, is Rabbi Eliezer says that this is only so for a limb that was severed from a living body. Amrulo. So they said they looked at Rabbi Eliezer and said, "What? How can you say such a thing? Hello, kal v'chomer. Isn't this a kal v'chomer? Uma min hachai shehu tahor, aver aporesh mimenu tame." So if you can make a kal v'chomer, like a living person is not matame ba'ohel, but a limb that's severed from him is matame ba'ohel. Okay. Aren't you going to make it kal v'chomer that a mace shehu matame, that the corpse itself is tamei ba'ohel? Aren't you going to say also that the limb that's severed from that must also be tamei? You get the kal v'chomer here?
Right. Yeah.
Rabbi Eliezer says no. Amar lahem lo amru ela al aver min hachai. This din is a special din. It's only said on aver min hachai. So he learns that there's no kal v'chomer over here, and that it's a chiddush. They only said this thing about something that's less than a kabetza. Sorry, kazais. It's a kazais, not a kabetza. Rewind and erase everything I said about a kabetza. The kabetza is for food. Kazais is for minames. Okay. And so he says there's no kal v'chomer over here. Davar acher, he says meruba tumas achayim tumas amesim. He says furthermore, you think that this is a kal v'chomer. I'd say that the tumah of living people is greater than the tumah of dead people. Why? Because a living person who is a zav or a nida, right, can make mishkav tumah. He can make mishkav or moshav mitachtav, which is right just by sitting or standing on something that's susceptible to mishkav or moshav tumah. Letame adam or letame begadim. He can be matame another person. He can be matame clothing from the mishkav back to the person. But al gabav madaf, and he can and above him he can create a madaf tuma that's a lesser tuma. Litame ochalim ul mashkin, which has the potential to be matame food and drinks, right? Masha ein a mace matame. If you have a mace out in the open air, and you place it and you lie the mace down on top of a bed with a blanket,
Right.
okay, the blanket will become tame because it's touching the mace. But the mishkav of the mace does not make the bed become tame. Whereas if you had a zav lying on that same bed outdoors, the bed, everything would become tame, and it would furthermore be able to be tame a person who sat on it afterwards. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer is saying don't make the kal v'chomer from living to the dead, because the living is the chamor. That can be much more chamor. So he's not. I mean, obviously he's more that a living person isn't matame ba'ohel, but except for a metzora. Metzora is matame ba'ohel, but he says you can't make a kal v'chomer because there are ways in which a living person is matame more there. Okay, so now Mishnah Gimel is a monster Mishnah. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of argument and back and forth, and try and stay with me over here.
All right.
Kazais basar poresh me'ever minachai. So now the discussion that we're going to have now is about a kazais of flesh. We're not talking about an aver anymore. We're now talking about just a kazais of flesh that was separated from something that was aver minachai. So you had a piece of a person like had a limb amputated, and then from that limb a kazayas of flesh was cut off. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer matame. He says, remember we just saw in this previous Mishnah that Rabbi Eliezer is matame on the aver minachai. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yechunya matarim, and they say no, this is no longer tame. It's 2 degrees separated from the aver minachai. The aver minachai itself was matame, but just a kazayas of flesh that was cut from an aver minachai. That's tahor. Okay. Second case, etzim kasora, a barley grain sized piece of bone. Haporesh me'aver minachai. Again, this is cut out of a piece of aver minachai. So somebody had a limb amputated, and then a piece of bone was cut out of that aver minachai. So again, 2 degrees separated. Rabbi Yechunya now is the one who's matame. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua matarin. And so Rabbi Yeshua seems to be the only one who's consistent over here, and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yechunya switch places. Right? Rabbi Eliezer is strict on the flesh, and Rabbi Yechunya is strict on the bone. And Rabbi Yeshua says neither of these cases, neither of these 2nd degree cases is tameh. Amru lo Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, so the other 2 guys look at Rabbi Eliezer, who's machmir on the flesh, and says, Mara isa l'tamei kazais basar poresh me'ever minachai. Why do you think that this is? Why should the flesh be tamei? Amar lehim. So his answer is matzinu ever minachai kameis shalem. We see that a limb from a living person is like a full-on corpse, right? Mahameis kazais basar poresh mimenu tamei, and just like from a corpse, a kazais of flesh that separates from a corpse is tamei. So similarly, the flesh that separates from it should also be tameh. Amru lo, they said you can't learn like that. Fine. We make flesh that comes from a corpse tameh. Okay. Because in the case of a corpse, even a barley grain sized piece of bone comes out of that tameh. Fine. Why should you now learn that out onto flesh that comes from Eva Menachai? You Rabbi Eliezer said yourself that the barley grain sized piece of bone that comes out of the Eva Menachai is tahor. So why are you differentiating between the bone and the flesh? If you're saying that the bone is tahor, why don't you say that the flesh is also tahor? So they hold this question in abeyance for now, and now they turn to Rabbi Yechunya and ask him exactly the opposite question. Why are you being matame the bone? The piece of bone that's separated from an Eva Minachai. Amar lahim, Matzinu Eva Minachai Kameis Shalom. He gives the same answer. Just like with a mace, where a small piece of bone that separates from it is tame. So similarly with an Eva Minachai, a piece of bone that comes out is tame. So they ask him exactly the same question in reverse. Amrulo. Im lo inti mesa etim kasora porish min ameis shekenti mesa kazais basara porish minu. Fine, something that comes out of a corpse. You matame the flesh that comes out of it. Tatame etim kasora porish min min achai shekenti harta kazais basar porish minu. Why are you being matame the bone from an eva min achai when you were matahir the flesh that comes out of that same piece of eva min achai?
You said that if we find a severed limb of a living person, it's like a complete corpse. So the same thing would be
it's
true.
like a complete corpse in the fact that it's matame ba'ohel, in the fact that it's you treat it as if it's a corpse.
The same as the flesh. It's a barley corn.
We're talking about there's the whole aver. The whole aver is matame even ba'ohel. Okay.
All right.
Which, incidentally, of course, is a reason why Kohanim really need to be careful about going into hospitals, because even if you do an amputation, that limb is matame ba'ohel, even if nobody's dead in the hospital. Okay. Okay, so now they've asked the same question in both directions on Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Nechunya. So they return now to Rabbi Eliezer. Why are you differentiating between bone and flesh? Or tame b'shneim, or tahar b'shneim. Either make them both tahor or make them both tame. So Rabbi Eliezer now justifies himself. Amar lahim, meruba tumas habasa mi tumas ha'atamos. He says that flesh tuma is stronger than bone tuma. Why? Because flesh applies to an avela and to shratzim, to creeping things, right? You can only become tame from the flesh of those things. But if you have the bones of an avela, or if just the bones of a sheretz, they're not matame at all. So that's why I am more machmir on flesh than on bone. Okay. Davar acher. Furthermore, if you have a limb that has sufficient flesh on it, matame v'maga v'masa v'ohel. Okay, that's matame. Chaser basar tame. If it is missing flesh, it is nonetheless tame. But if it's missing bone, then it's tahor. Now, hang on. Doesn't that prove the opposite point? Just a second. Okay, chaser basar. If it doesn't have enough. Okay, it's tame, but it's not matame b'ohel, but it is matame by touch and by carrying. But if it's missing the bone, hold on. That's kind of proving the opposite point. Sorry, this is because it's confusing me for a second. Hold on. If there's an aver that has enough flesh, it's matame everything. So why is the flesh more strict? Because if it's missing the flesh, sorry, it's him. Okay, I'm stumped here. Just a sec. With time, Nonetheless. Oh. That the if you've just got so here's the logic. Got it. So if there's a little bit of the flesh lacking, so that if such a limb had to be reattached to a person, it would not be able to reattach. So now if you've got less flesh than the normal minimum,
Right.
nonetheless it's still tame. Okay, so even a smaller amount of flesh nonetheless renders the person tame. But if you're lacking a little bit of bone, then it's tahor, which means that the bone doesn't have the power to be matame. Where the flesh still has the power to be matame, even if it's not the required shear. So that's his proof. Okay. So now we turn to Rabbi Nechunya. Okay, why are you differentiating? Or tame b'shneim, or tar b'shneim, flesh and bone. Should either both be tar or both be tame. Amar lahim meruba tumas ha'atzamos mitumas habasar. He says the opposite, and he says no, bone tumah is more strict. Why? She'abasar poresh minachai tahor. Because flesh that separates from a living person is tahor. V'ever haporesh mimenu v'hu kibriha so tame. Because if you just cut a chunk of flesh out of a living person, there's no tumah. But if you cut out a full aver that is like at the end of a pinky or something like that, that is tame, okay? Which means that you need the bone inside it in order to make it tame. If it's lacking bone, then there's no tumah. But once it's got bone, then there's tumah. So that's his angle on it. Davar acher, furthermore, he says, Kazais basar metami b'magav masa b'ohel, v'rov atzamos metami b'magav masa b'ohel. Okay, so both the kazais of flesh and a bucket of bones, basically, rov atzamos, the majority of bones of a person's body are metame by touch, by carrier, and in an ohel. Chaser habaser tahar. If the flesh is lacking, then it is tahor. Chaser rov atzamos af al pi she tahor minatami beohel metami b'magav masa. So even though it's still lacking in being able to be metami beohel, nonetheless it's still metami b'magav masa. So we see that bone tumah is stronger. Davar acher, and furthermore, kol basar hameis shehu pachos mikazayis tahor. If you take any amount that's less than a kazayis of flesh, even from a mace, it's tahor. Rov minyano shall mace. But if you have, for example, an aborted fetus that's less than a kazayis of basar, right? But nonetheless, it's still got you can still see developed bones.
Okay.
Afal pi she'ein bahem rova, even though you don't have a rova atamos, you don't have the rova kav of bones. Tamein, it's nonetheless tame. So therefore, again, you see bone tumah is stronger. Okay. So each one of them is given their perspective. Amrullah Rabbi Yeshua. Says Rabbi Yeshua, they say to Rabbi Yeshua, Mara Isa l'tahar b'shneim. Okay, so why do you think they're both tahor? So Rabbi Yeshua's got an easy answer. Amar lahem lo ima martin b'meis sheyesh bo rov v'rov v'rakav. You've got all these different stringencies in a mace. That it's got it's got rov, which is the rov of its body, the rov of the mace on the tamim, just like we explained above, and the rova is a quarter of cup of bones, which also makes the person tame. Rakav, all of the stuff that oozes out of the mace, and the sand that comes underneath it. All of these things are tame. Are you going to say this that on a living person, she'ein bo rov rakav? It doesn't have all these stringencies of a dead body, and therefore the tumah of a mace is higher than that of a living person, and therefore we can be more makil on the things that are separated from an eva min achai. Okay, long Mishna, and another
complicated, very complicated, very.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now but just by the way, we have switched back to, we don't have a paid account anymore. So these Zooms are restricted to 40 minutes, and we've got 6 minutes to do. Because sorry, if it cuts out, then I'll just start the meeting again and we can finish.
Okay. So we have a Gimel Hey, correct?
Gimel Tes.
Sorry. Gimel Tes. Okay. Okay. There are four things that Rabbi Gamliel deemed capable of becoming tummy.
No,
And
Gimel Ches. The
that's
three things
test.
that
You said
Rabbi-
test. I think you said test. Okay. In three cases concerning tumor susceptibility, Reb Tzaddik rules that the articles become tummy, and the sages rule that they are not. They are tummy, tahor. The nail of a money changer and the grist merchant's chest, the nail of a sundial. Reb Tzaddik deems that these three capable of becoming tummy, but the sages rule them that they are tahor. There are four things that Rabbi Gamliel deems capable of becoming tamei, and the sages deem tahor. The metal cover of a household is tani, and the hanger of a stringel, and unfinished metal utensils, and a tray that's split into two. But the common agree that with Rabbi Gamliel in the case of a tray that's split into two pieces, one large and one small, that the large piece is capable of becoming tamei, and the small piece is tahor. In three matters, Rabbi Gamliel rules stringently in accordance with Beis Shammai. A. One may not insulate hot water on Yom Tov for the Sabbath. Base. One may not straighten out a candlestick on Yom Tov, and one may not bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, only wafers. Gamil said, in all my days at my father's household, they would never bake thick loaves of bread on Yom Tov, only wafers. Then the Kamar disagreed with Rabbi Gamil, said to him, and what shall we do with your father's household? They were stringent upon themselves, but they were ruled leniently for the people of Israel, allowing them to bake thick loaves of bread and even cold baked bread on Yom Tov. Okay.
Shavuos, Aleph, Dalet.
Oh my gosh. Hold where you are.